I call this meeting of the Oversight and Investigation Subcommittee of the House Foreign Affairs Committee to order. Today's hearing is about a part of the world and a people that most Americans know nothing about, Balochistan, an area inhabited by the Baluch people who trace their history back for centuries. Balochistan deserves our attention because it is a turbulent land marked by human rights violations committed by regimes that are hostile to America's interests and values. It holds a very strategic location in an area of intense international rivalries. Balochistan comprises about 800 miles of coast at the head of the Arabian Sea between Iran and India and runs inland to southern Afghanistan. The Baluchs are a fiercely independent warrior people who have made their land a perilous land to invade, except until that natural gas and other mineral wealth was discovered there in this last century. During the 17th century, the tribes were united in a loose confederation until the British incorporated the area into the Indian Empire in the 19th century. The British, however, ruled the area with a light touch, leaving tribal chiefs in control of their everyday affairs. At the time of the partition of the British Raj into contemporary Pakistan and India back in 1947, the Baluch leaders voiced a desire for independence, but the Pakistan army took control of the area and forced the Baluch tribal chiefs to submit to the rule from Islamabad. The partition was based on religion, that partition between India and Pakistan. It was based on religion rather than ethnic identity. The Baluchs are Sunni Muslims, and Pakistan, which was founded as an Islamic state, sees itself as the rightful ruler of all Muslims of the subcontinent. Pakistani ideology holds Islam as the first identity, but other people identify themselves and their interest in many different ways. In practice, Pakistan does not treat all Muslims equally. The Baluch have seen little benefit from the development of the natural gas, coal, gold, uranium, and copper that is produced in their province. Instead, the wealth is taken for the benefit of the dominant Punjabi elite that runs the country from Islamabad. Balochistan remains the poorest province in Pakistan, even though it is the richest in natural resources. Attacks against natural gas installations and pipelines by Baluch insurgents are steadily increasing, and there have been assassinations of Chinese engineers who are helping Pakistan develop resources that will be shipped out of the province to benefit Islamabad and, of course, Beijing. The province's major port, let me pronounce it, Gwadar, thank you. Thank you very much. Gwadar. See, we're going to learn by this. This is going to be here where we're going to learn about things. And the port of Gwadar has also been developed with the help of China and may become a naval base as well as a trade and energy transit center. Pakistan, however, is using this development to attract Punjabis into the province with the aim, perhaps, of outnumbering the local native Baluch. There was a major uprising in Balochistan that ran from 1973 to 77, and the Baluch nationalists were inspired by the independence of Bangladesh, which was won in 1971. The Baluch insurgency, however, was ruthlessly crushed by Pakistani forces. After 2 decades of relative calm, insurgency broke out again in 2005. Islamabad has refused to concede any legitimacy to Baluch nationalism or to engage the Baluch leadership in serious negotiations. Its response has been based on brute force, including extrajudicial killings. The State Department and Amnesty International have condemned Pakistan for these murderous acts in Balochistan. Across the border in Iran, there is a province, Sistan Balochistan, which is dominated by the ethnic Baluchs. The mullah regime there has denied them their basic human rights, and as in Pakistan, the Baluchs are denied proper education and economic opportunities. As in Pakistan, the resources of the Sistan Balochistan are often used to support an elite in a distant capital, leaving the local Baluchs in both countries impoverished. The governor of Sistan Balochistan is appointed by the mullah regime in Tehran. The governor of Pakistan's Balochistan is determined by a very complicated process which has some democratic elements, but the nationalist parties thought the system was so corrupt that they boycotted the elections in 2008. I hope our witnesses can shed some light on how free and fair a political process in that area could be, and give us some insights into what's going on there in terms of the political process. A low-level insurgency is in progress in Iran as it is in Pakistan, with both countries reacting with the same brutal way of stamping out resistance. The Baluch in Iran are even more oppressed than those in Pakistan, because Tehran is run by Shiite theocrats who consider Sunni Muslims to be worse than heretics. Sunni Baluch clerics have been killed as part of an Iranian counterinsurgency campaign. South Asia cannot be understood purely in religious terms, as Muslim versus Muslim or Sunni versus Shiite. Group identities there are rooted in deeper tribal and village allegiances with cultural attributes and historical experiences that go back for centuries. This hearing will explore what these mean and what they mean to the United States, what are the geopolitics of the region, the security of Pakistan, Iran, and their neighbors, how these things are being affected, as well as the stability of that whole area. Also, we're looking at find out about those things and how all of these factors and the dynamics that are at work play into the existing borders and aspirations of self-determination from all the perspectives that Americans hold in value. We believe in self-determination and democracy, believe that people have a right to speak up, but we are also very concerned about the stability and of that part of the world and what this means to America and to the people there. So as I say, this hearing, although I know that a lot of people saw this with trepidations, we're trying to understand something that we, and I think we as the American people, have not paid attention to. So we need to learn things like how to pronounce the port there and things like that. But even more than that, how to identify what forces are at work and who's legitimate, have some legitimate complaints, and what would be what America should be doing in reaction to the events there with the people there. So we're not here to, we're here to learn, and that's what this hearing's all about. And with that, I would turn to my ranking member, Mr. Carnahan, for his opening remarks. Let me note, please don't applaud. Please don't throw fruit at me either. So it'd be nice just because it takes up time, and we got to be out of here in about an hour. So go right ahead,
Mr. Chairman. I'm glad to see you have a rousing ovation here today in this subcommittee hearing. You say that like someone who's used to being applauded and having fruit thrown at you. So,
oh yes,
it goes along with the territory. But seriously. Thank you for holding this hearing today. It's really very critical that we examine U.S. relations with Pakistan in multiple contexts like this. Mr. Chairman, since you last called a hearing this past summer on U.S. strategy in South Asia, it's fair to say that the U.S.-Pakistan relationship has continued to strain, but remains absolutely a critical partnership. I would urge the Pakistani government to step up its efforts to weed out terror activity within and along its own borders. Pakistan has significant challenges within its own country that have national, regional, and certainly international implications. One of the concerns and the topic of today's hearing is the situation in Balochistan. This past month, a State Department spokesman said, quote, "The U.S. is deeply concerned about the ongoing violence in Balochistan, especially targeted killings, disappearances, and other human rights abuses," unquote. She further stated that the administration takes allegations of human rights abuses very seriously and that it had discussed these issues with Pakistani officials. While the administration is not here today to testify, I would urge U.S. officials to continue to bring these issues up in the course of our diplomatic discussions. With the significant investment of U.S. funding in Pakistan, it is Congress's job to make sure we're getting the return on the investment that our taxpayers deserve. We need to ensure that every dollar of U.S. taxpayer-funded assistance is being used properly and in our interest. Vigorous oversight of all U.S. foreign aid is critical to the success of our programs there and is a key component to building infrastructure and capacity in Pakistan. However, the U.S. and international commitment to Pakistan is not enough. In the face of all its challenges, it is critical that Pakistan work to ensure the integrity of its own people and its own country, including Balochistan. And as the U.S., the UN, and NATO continue in Afghanistan, the Afghan-Balochistan border remains critical to ensuring that we are making decisions that move Pakistan, Afghanistan, and the entire region toward increased stability. Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to hearing the esteemed panel of witnesses that we have with us today.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sherman, do you have an opening statement?
I do indeed.
Go right ahead.
I want to thank the chairman of this subcommittee for allowing me to make a statement at this hearing. I've been on the full committee for 15 years and haven't had the honor to be a member of this subcommittee, but have had a chance to see its work when reported to the full committee. My statement will focus not only on Balochistan, but the adjoining area of the Sindh province. Many Baluch live in the Sindh province, and to a great extent, the Pakistani government treatment of both these southern areas is similar. Pakistan-U.S. relations hit an all-time low last year when we found bin Laden in Abbottabad, and perhaps later when allegedly the U.S. Embassy in Kabul was attacked by those who may have had the help of the ISI. That is why it's more important than ever for the U.S. to reach out to the various people who have been marginalized by the Pakistani government. The people of Balochistan and Sindh, their culture, language, and way of life are under attack and underrepresented from so many major government entities in Pakistan. Political activities defending Baluch and Sindhi rights are subject to arrests, disappearances, torture, and even killing. I believe the U.S. must reach out to these underrepresented historic segments of the Pakistani population. The Baluch people are culturally and traditionally regarded as secular and moderate, strongly influenced by the cultural traditions of Sufism. Both the Sindhis and the Baluch have a culture that I think will be consistent with American values. And a significant part of the people of Sindh, of course, are Baluch ethnically or have Baluch origins. The Baluch and Sindhis, including those Baluch living in Sindhi province, share the goal of government recognition of their cultural, political, and economic rights. Balochistan is Pakistan's most underdeveloped province. It has the highest unemployment and poverty rates, the lowest quality of life when measured economically of any province in Pakistan. The road infrastructure is also poor, and as the chairman points out, this is ironic because it is such a resource-rich area, especially as to natural gas. Islamabad's reluctance to give the Baluch people more autonomy is in part because they covet those resources. The Baluch seek a more equitable share of the region's rich natural resources, and that is another source of resentment. A third source of resentment is the Pakistani army cantonments that are being established in the Baluch areas. A small minority of Baluch have undertaken the armed struggle, which was described by the chairman, and he also described its history. There's also, as the chairman described, Baluch on the Iranian side of the border waging a conflict against the Ayatollah regime. In this critical part of the world, we cannot afford to ignore the southern half of Pakistan, especially its population of Baluch and Sindhis. I had an opportunity last year to found the Sindh Caucus, and I'd invite my colleagues to join. It is co-chaired by Dan Burton. Adam Schiff is an active member. Strong, as I've noted, the people of Sindh have a moderate tradition that is consistent with U.S. values and U.S. interests. For many years, the Pakistani government has tried to impose just one language, Urdu, on the people of Pakistan, when in fact Sindhi is spoken by more people than Urdu. We need to reach out to the people of Sindh province and others who speak the Sindhi language, and we need to do so in the Sindh language. Right now, the Voice of America is broadcasting only in Urdu. That is why I want to commend our full committee for voting for my amendment to require that the Voice of America start broadcasting in the Sindh language, and now it's a matter of actually making that happen through the bureaucracy and through the Appropriations Committee. And I look forward to the day when that is a success and we're back here talking about the Baluch language. I believe my time has expired, and I yield back to the chair.
Thank you very much. It's always great to chair a hearing where someone is more radical than I am on certain issues.
A rare occurrence, I might add.
Actually, we see eye to eye on almost everything, except that he's a Democrat and I'm a Republican. We also have another soft-spoken member of Congress joining us, Louis Gohmert from Texas, and with ask unanimous consent that he may sit in on this hearing as and have the rights of all the other members of the committee. So ordered. And we have a great, Louis, do you have a couple minutes opening statement for us, or go right ahead if you had, take 2 minutes. Take 1 minute. Take 1 minute and get yourself.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is an honor to be here, and it's I think just wonderful that you've called this hearing, and I appreciate the interest I'm hearing from our Democratic friends. But when you have a place in the world that was forced to be part of another country in 1948, as Balochistan was, and then in that same country, the people that are native to that area are harassed, what some of us would consider to have be the human rights of dignity that every human being should be afforded, are violated on a regular basis by the national government. And then further, that government goes on to, whether it's official or unofficial, to furnish supplies, encouragement. What people I met with in forward operating bases in Afghanistan last month tell me are the supplies, the IEDs, the weapons coming into the Taliban. So many are coming from Pakistan and coming from the Balochistan area. And as an editorial I was pleased to read in the Pakistan Daily Times noted, maybe it's time that we quit working so hard to support the Taliban in another country and concentrate more on our own country. And I think it would make the United States very happy to see that. It would make people of Afghanistan very happy that the Taliban was no longer being provided weapons to inflict harm on them, and it would make the Baluchs very happy from my discussion with them that they were allowed to live in peace without being subjected to horrors from their own government. So I'm delighted you asked for this hearing, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
All right. Thank you very much. No applause. Thank you very much, Mr. Gomert. We have witnesses ahead of us. You'll note that there are a couple more witnesses than we originally planned. Because we do know so little about this region, we didn't know who to invite. And there were some suggestions that were sent to me over the internet that we maybe should expand it to make sure there's a little bit more representative of a cross-section of views, and that's what we did. So I want to thank whoever sent me those suggestions, and I think we're going to have a much richer hearing because of it. But we have a time problem, and the time problem is that they're going to call votes sometime in the next hour, maybe even half hour, 45 minutes. So I'm going to hold each one of you to the 5-minute rule for your testimony. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to because otherwise there won't be any time for questions and answers at all. We have with us on the panel Christine Fair, Assistant Professor, Center for Peace and Security Studies at the Edmund Walsh School of Foreign Service in Georgetown University. Previously, she has served as a senior political scientist with RAND Corporation, a political officer to the United Nations Assistance Mission to Afghanistan, and as a member of the International Institute for Strategic Studies, the Council on Foreign Relations, and serves on the editorial board of studies in conflict and terrorism. Tell you what, I will introduce each one just prior to their testimony, and we know how soft-spoken you are, Dr. Fair, and how you never cause any controversy, but you enlightened everyone. So you may proceed. 5 minutes.
Sir, you're one of my favorite Republicans. We don't see eye to eye on a lot of things, but on the things we see eye to eye on, we see eye to eye.
Okay.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak on this really important topic. As you noted, there aren't that many folks that know about Balochistan. There aren't that many folks that know about Pakistan. And when this topic comes up, it's usually focused on the war on terror in Afghanistan. So it's nice to see that there's a hearing specifically dedicated to this particular issue. I've submitted a longer, very long written statement that I request become part of the permanent record. In that statement, I spend quite a bit of time trying to map out what we know geographically, historically, and demographically about Balochistan. Unfortunately, we don't know a lot because the Pakistan census is terribly out of date, and unfortunately, the process of a census in Pakistan has become very politicized. But what we do know is that the Baluch ethnic group is the largest ethnic group in the province. The exact numbers are perhaps unknown. But we also know that by any measure of human development, and I put a few, just a sample in my testimony, by any measure of human development, by any development, any measure of economic development, Balochistan always ranks all below the other provinces in Pakistan, with the perhaps exception of FATA. In addition to that, as you note in your opening statement, Balochistan is actually a very large producer of resources. Yet, ironically, even though Balochistan produces about 40% of the country's gas, very few Baluch actually take advantage of that gas because there's no infrastructure for them to do so. So when you meet with folks from Balochistan, they'll tell you the only time they get gas or electricity hookups is when a cantonment comes to town. The Army will counter that it's very hard to spread that infrastructure throughout a province, which accounts for about 5% of Pakistan's population, but about 40% of the terrain. So they'll know that there are logistical challenges. Obviously, the truth lies somewhere in between. But Balochistan's appalling human rights record also stands before us. We have Human Rights Watch here, we have Amnesty International. Everyone knows about the forced abductions that are going on. Everyone knows that Balochistan has been a very restive province from day one. Many Baluch didn't even want to join the Union of Pakistan. In that sense, it shares a lot of similarities to Kashmir, right? Kashmir was also forcibly annexed. And many of the challenges that we see happening in Pakistan vis-a-vis Balochistan could also, I think, be said in some measure about the situation in Kashmir. Curiously, what I find very puzzling about Pakistan is that over the last since 2004, the state's been waging a pretty vicious counterinsurgency campaign against elements of the so-called Pakistan Taliban, and it's generated quite a bit of outrage amongst Pakistanis. Yet the last 6 decades of episodic military use of force against Baluch insurgents doesn't really cause that kind of outrage at all. In fact, in my written statement, I provided a link to a very fascinating BBC documentary that was called Kaun Balochistan Ko Jante Hain, Who Knows Balochistan? They went around Lahore and they asked folks, do you know what Balochistan is? Can you name a city? And it was actually appalling how few people knew where the province was, that there was an insurgency, that people couldn't even name the major city of Quetta. So you have this very interesting combination of the ability of lethal force, but yet you have very few people in Pakistan who know about it. A second related problem is that because it has so few people, and because the representation in the National Assembly is based upon population, it means that Balochistan can never have any heft in the National Assembly. While it has equal representation in the Senate, as I'm sure you know, in Pakistan the Senate has very little power. Now, while we focus upon the abductions and the state-sponsored human rights abuses, which are numerous, I do want to point out, though, that this isn't the only kind of violence which is happening in Pakistan or in Balochistan. So the forced disappearances, I'm sure my colleagues from Amnesty and from Human Rights Watch will dilate upon them. But there are also targeted killings that are unfortunately done by some Baluch. I understand the sentiment that there is this perception that they're being colonized by the Punjab, but unfortunately there is a path dependency problem. Balochistan has a massive problem with education, right? So how do you produce teachers from a province that doesn't have, on the main, people who are adequately educated to produce the folks who can subsequently become teachers? So there is a need for teachers to come from other provinces in Balochistan, but I'm sure Human Rights Watch, and I've written an entire report about this, many of those teachers have been singled out because they're Punjabi. And it's not just teachers, it's also providers of other human services. Police, in particular, are very vulnerable. So I don't only want to draw attention to the targeted killing of one community by state forces, but in fact we have a lot of axes of violence that are converging in Balochistan. Another one that doesn't get a lot of attention is also the sectarian violence. Shia have paid a heavy price in Pakistan, and we can continue to see this kind of violence happening in Balochistan. Oh, there we go. Sure.
Hopefully we'll have time for some questions and answers, and I would also suggest if the panel would like to, during their 5 minutes, express something about what's already been said, please feel free. We have with us Ralph Peters, a writer, a strategist, media commentator, retired military officer. He is the author of 28 books and approximately 1,000 columns and articles and essays. Being a writer, I can appreciate that, admire that. He served in the U.S. Army for 22 years as an American. I'm grateful for that service. First as an enlisted man, then as an officer, retiring shortly after his promotion to lieutenant colonel. As a soldier, Ralph served in the infantry and military intelligence units before becoming a foreign area officer specializing in Russia and surrounding states. He also served in the executive office of the president. Special assignments took him to Southeast Asia, Central Asia, to the Caucasus, to Pakistan, and Burma. He has studied extensively in the Muslim world, as well as studying in India, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Indonesia. He's reported from various conflict zones, including Iraq, Israel, and Sub-Saharan Africa. Mr. Peters, you have 5 minutes, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate this opportunity, and I'm sure you will agree with me, as will Congressman Carnahan, that such an important problem cannot be approached in a partisan manner. And we have to act as Americans with our American values and bring those to bear, not an ideology of any kind. Let us start with the incontrovertible fact, and that is that Balochistan is occupied territory. It never willingly acceded to Pakistan, does not now wish to be part of Pakistan. If a plebiscite or referendum were held tomorrow, it would vote to leave Pakistan, as would every province and territory west of the Indus River. We have a fundamental problem in that we refuse to see Pakistan for what it is. We imagine or pretend that it's a legitimate state, really in our own image, a democracy. But it's a democracy only as long as its military rulers allow it to be a democracy. It is, in fact, a miniature empire, a last artifact, along with a few other countries around the world, of the imperial age, with artificial borders, which we defend as we do elsewhere. And I find it a travesty that our State Department obsesses on the inviolability of borders around the world drawn at Versailles or in Berlin in the 1880s or in the late 1940s. How is it that in the year of our Lord 2012, we send our troops to bleed or die to defend the residue of the European world order? And let me be clear, I do not argue that we should actively campaign militarily to change every border in the world. I argue that when the train is coming down the tracks toward you, you are wise to step off the tracks. In the last 2 decades, since the end of the Cold War, the United States of America, the greatest force for freedom in human history, every war and conflict in which we have engaged has been triggered by or exacerbated by these flawed European borders. How can we send our soldiers and Marines and Navy corpsmen to die for that? That's not who we are. But what is Pakistan? Pakistan is bisected by the Indus River. To the east of the Indus River is metropolitan, core Pakistan, the Punjab, and to a great extent, the province of Sindh. It is the world of the subcontinent. It is a different civilization from that west of the Indus River. West of the Indus River, in the occupied territories, you have the culture of Central and Mid-Asia. When you cross the Indus River either way, even the food is different. And we look at this occupied territory of Balochistan specifically, where people who simply yearn for fundamental freedoms, for the right to determine their own future, whether or not they have a battery of qualified teachers ready to go. We must admire their determination to sacrifice everything against enormous odds in Pakistan and Iran for the simple right to say, I am a Baluch. I will decide my own future. Instead, we support Pakistan, their oppressor, a state that actively supports and arms terrorists and insurgent movements in Afghanistan that kill and maim our own soldiers. The Pakistani government is not our friend. It is not the friend of the Baluch or the other subjugated peoples west of the Indus River. The Durand Line, of course, which divides Pakistan and Afghanistan, is artificial. It divides people who want to be together. Mr. Chairman, my time is running out, so let me simply say this last thing. 200 years ago, one of our greatest presidents faced a problem. The Barbary pirates refused to let our ships pass in peace, so we paid tribute money to let our goods pass. Thomas Jefferson put a stop to that. Today, we are paying tribute money again, this time to the Pakistani pirates, to let our goods pass to Afghanistan. Mr. Chairman, I am looking for a Thomas Jefferson.
Thank you very much. And I'm looking for William Eaton myself. It's pretty deep there.
Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to be
All
bipartisan.
right. Thank you very much. And we'll have some very, and I appreciate you softening your remarks and making them so nobody really knows where you're coming from. Great. Both of our witnesses have been very tough. That's what we want to be. We want to be upfront, because if people are hiding what their real beliefs are, trying to couch it, people aren't going to understand what the reality is if we're trying to not make other people angry, but we want to make sure all of us are educated to that. Our next witness is Mr. T. Kumar. Oh, there you are. I was looking at this. Mr. T. Kumar, who I know very well, an advocacy director for Asia Pacific for Amnesty International, who is a persona here on the Hill and champion of human rights. He has worked in several Asian and African countries and served as a human rights monitor, in many Asian countries, as well as Bosnia, Haiti, Guatemala, South Africa. Kumar is frequently lecturing Foreign Service Institute, where U.S. diplomats are trained, and often testifies before the United States Senate and House of Representatives. He holds an advanced degree in law from the University of Pennsylvania Law School and you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Chairman, Mr. Chairman and members of Congress. When I saw the announcement about having a hearing on Balochistan, it came back to Afghanistan during the time when Afghanistan was forgotten by the entire world. Chairman, you understand what happened after the collapse of Soviet Union. The people of Balochistan was going through nightmare for the years. Torture, disappearances, extrajudicial executions. But world refused to look at them. Leave alone Pakistanis. Even the Pakistani civil society was limited. There were some exceptions. Did not speak up about the plight of Baluchis that they were undergoing. Massive disappearances. Disappearance means to kidnap people or arrest people and never be heard again. Hundreds disappeared. We have documented recently, we are talking about after the so-called democracy came to Pakistan, almost 250 disappearances in a year's time. And extrajudicial executions, torture. So the brutality was continuing in Balochistan, despite the fact that it is just next door to Afghanistan, where US have enormous interest, and Pakistan again enormous interest. So on that note, we are pleased and honored that you are holding this hearing to bring attention to the plight of Baluchis there. What's happening to Baluch people? It's a kill and dump operation. It's a terror mechanism that the Pakistani military and the intelligence officers who used to terrorize the local population. It may be for a political reason, because some people may be, a majority of Baluch may be asking for independence. By the way, on that note, Amnesty International, as a human rights organization, does not take position on whether a country is independent or not. But having said that, they brutalized the population because the population wanted some opening in their political aspirations. Then when people speak up, the weapons that were used against them were unfortunately manufactured in the US and given to by the US. A couple of years ago, when the disappearance was high-rocketing in Balochistan, the Balochistan governor was here. So I asked him, actually at USIP, I asked him whether, whose weapons are you using? He said, oh, it's American weapons. The reason is no conditions were put on us. So it's a matter of principle that Congress can put some requirement that no US weapon should be used in Balochistan in abusing its own citizens. That is something you can do. You don't get permission from the State Department. Speaking about State Department, they were in sleep for years, not only now, earlier on as well. When Senator Baluch, Sana Baluch was invited again to USIP, they refused to give him visa to come and testify. He's a senator, elected senator. So there are concerns that even US over the years have ignored for different political reasons. So now the time has come, through this hearing and through other mechanisms, we hope the state will also, the administration will also change its policy, not about any political questions there, but primarily talking about the plight of Baluchis and how to stop abuses that are happening against them. There are also other people who are involved in abusing the human rights in that area. One group is obviously the group that fight for independence. These are Baluch nationalists. They were the prime victims of abuse. At the same time, there are reports that they also targeted killing of Punjabis and others. So it's a time that Baluch population examine themselves. That since you have been abused, you know the value of human rights. You should speak up and to stop abuses against anyone. It could be anyone. I know it's time.
Your time's out.
Thank you very much.
That was left on a good note. But don't applaud, because challenging people who want to have their human rights respected, challenging them to respect the human rights of others, is a really important point, and you just made that. We have two other witnesses, and then we will go into our questions and answers. But we are joined in the meantime by another member of Congress, a champion of American commitment to freedom and democracy, a real patriot from Texas, and a man of the law, Judge Poe. In fact, both Congressman Gohmert and Judge Poe are both former judges, and so when we talk about the law and the violations of human rights, they shine out with their expertise as well as their passion. So we're very happy to have you join us, Your Honor, and we'll proceed with the witnesses right now so we can get through this and then go on to questions and answers. We have Dr. Hussein Boor, a lawyer active in facilitating trade, investment, and project development between American corporations and their counterparts from Gulf countries. Dr. Boor previously served as an adjunct professor of law at the Catholic University of America and was the energy and economic advisor to the Embassy of Qatar in Washington, D.C. from 1982 to 1998. He has written extensively on various issues relating to the Middle East, including treaties on Iran and nationalities. He holds a PhD in degrees from both American University and Washington University, and you may proceed, Dr. Boor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's a great honor and pleasure for me to speak on behalf of Baluch. I'm, of course, an American Baluch myself, and thank you for the opportunity, honorable members. As you know, Balochistan is the most, really, the Baluch people are the most persecuted, oppressed, and neglected peoples in the Middle East and South Asia. And of course, you, Mr. Chairman, gave a very good overview of Baluch history. The only thing I can add, Baluch, look at their history in one term. Baluch era or Baluch Dora, mean the era when the Baluch ruled themselves and their institutions and values were supreme in Balochistan, and the post-Baluch era, which is the era of colonialism, and of course their subsequent division and forceful incorporation into Iran and Afghanistan and of course Pakistan. And of course, before the advent of colonialism, you should also notice that the Baluch were independent. Like Europe, there were several feudal states, and in many eras also in the 14th, 15th century, you had a large confederacy of Baluchi state, and their reigns extending from Kerman in the east, in Persia, to the Indus Valley. And that is also the current boundaries of Balochistan as a whole. And of course, as you well know, the Balochistan was divided by the British into three parts. Goldsmith Line, drawn in 1871 by the British colonial officers, divided Balochistan between Iran and British India. And of course, the Durand Line, drawn also by the British in 1894, divided Balochistan between British India and Afghanistan. And of course, but Baluch, ever since, they have been struggling to regain their lost freedom, to reassert the Baluch control over their homeland Balochistan, and to preserve their language and culture. And the Baluch have never accepted or recognized either the Goldsmith Line dividing the Baluch between Iran and Pakistan, nor the Durand Line separating northern Balochistan. This is reflected in 4 insurrections by the Baluch against Pakistan in 1948, 1958, 1973, and 2005 insurgency, which is continuing and growing in strength each day. Like Baluch, Afghanistan and nationalist Pashtuns Pakistan also do not recognize the Durand Line. Of course, my colleagues, they well articulated the plight of human rights in Balochistan and the egregious violation of Baluch human rights by Pakistani army and the Pakistani government. The only thing I can add, according to a report published by the Asian Human Rights Commission on January 31st last month, It says that the extrajudicial killings of disappeared persons in Balochistan include 23 bullet-riddled bodies found during the first month of this year, during January. 56 mutilated bodies during the last 6 months, and 271 bodies since July 2010. That tells you about the extent of the brutality. And according, of course, to Baluch sources, the figures are much higher. And since 2001, about 4,000 Baluchis have disappeared. And this is a continuing problem. And that is one of the main reasons that the Baluch leaders...
Excuse me, you said from 2001 till the present date, how many
more
have
than
disappeared?
4,000.
4,000?
Yes, sir.
People have disappeared.
And of course, this is one of the main impediment to Baluch leaders negotiating with the weak civilian government in Pakistan. Until these issues are resolved to the satisfaction of the aggrieved Baluch families, no Baluch leader would dare to negotiate with the Pakistani government. And of course, they also, as they stated, Balochistan is one of the most richest land in the world: oil, aluminium, gold, coal, but it is exploited for the benefit of non-Baluch in Punjab. And even though the Balochistan account for 30% of the natural gas exploited in Pakistan, Balochistan's share is only 17%. The rest, even the British colonialists were not so greedy and brutal. And that's why that the Balochistan remained the least developed region in Pakistan. And there is no really basic industries to talk about. Huh? And of course, that is one of the main reasons for the ongoing insurgency in Balochistan. Huh?
That's the end of your 5 minutes right now, so we'll have to move on during the questions and answers. And by the way, with unanimous consent, the entire your entire statements will be put into the record. So when you get a record of the hearing, your entire statement will be in the record. We now turn to Alidayan Hassan, is the Pakistan Director of Asia Division of Human Rights Watch. Before taking over as Pakistan Director, he served as Human Rights Watch for South Asia as a researcher, and that he did since 2003, and specialized in Pakistan. Before joining the Human Rights Watch, Hassan was a senior editor at Pakistan's premier independent political news monthly, The Herald, and during 2006-2007, he was also a visiting scholar from Oxford, University of Oxford, and has a BA from the London School of Economics and a master's degree from St. Anthony's College in Oxford. And we welcome you, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me this opportunity. I've listened with care to what my colleagues, the fellow witnesses, have had to say. I would like to clarify at the outset that my testimony is based on my experiences as someone who has researched extensively on human rights abuses in Balochistan, often on the ground in the province itself. Now, at the outset, because there has been this question of independence that has been raised, I want to clarify that Human Rights Watch, as an international human rights organization, takes no position on this particular issue of independence. We understand that Balochistan is an internationally recognized part of Pakistan, and we expect the Pakistani government to adhere to all human rights protections within the Pakistani constitution and as mandated by international law. We have also found the Pakistani state, particularly the military, entirely lacking in this department. Balochistan presents a hydra-headed conflict situation. There are multiple actors perpetrating violence in there, but the engine of human rights abuse, no doubt, is the Pakistani military, paramilitaries, and intelligence agencies. They have run, particularly since 2004, a campaign of enforced disappearances, where at least hundreds of Baloch nationalists have disappeared. In the last year and a half, we have seen targeted killings increase, and something between 200 and 300 Baloch opponents of the Pakistani state have been found killed, and of course torture and illegal detention by the military and paramilitaries and intelligence agencies are commonplace. This is a absolutely appalling situation even by Pakistani standards, and certainly when you are operating in Balochistan, you do see that the military in many ways behaves like a brutal occupying military. That is its behavior. All of this is a very serious problem. I would, however, point out that in the latest spike, the issue of disappearances became commonplace in Pakistan and in Balochistan in particular because of the license provided by the US, the UK, and other powers in the context of the war on terror, where the disappearance and illegal detention of Taliban and Al-Qaeda suspects was green-lighted effectively by the US. This gave the Pakistani military carte blanche, if you will, to extend such abusive operations to its own political opponents, which include Baloch nationalists. Having said that, there are also multiple abuses, though of course I must clarify that there is no comparison between the abuses perpetrated by the state and other actors, but there are abuses that we have documented by Baloch nationalist militants, particularly attacks against education personnel and against other non-Baloch residents of the province. Now, non-Baloch residents of the province are not a small minority. We are talking of, though there is contentious figures because of a lack of census, something about 40% at least of the population of Balochistan.
Did you say 40 or 14?
40.
40.
40% of the population of Balochistan, this is an approximation, are non-Baloch, at least. So this is a very, very complex situation. Now, non-Baloch, particularly Punjabi settlers and Urdu-speaking settlers in Balochistan, are living equally in fear of their lives because of fear of attack from Baloch nationalists. Finally, there is the issue of religious militant groups, particularly Sunni militant groups, that are attacking the Shia, largely Hazara, but Shia in general. And these militant groups often do act, it is alleged and widely believed, in conjunction with or at the behest of the Pakistani military. But they also act independently. The basic problem is that if the Pakistani state takes Balochistan seriously, it must enforce a rights-respecting rule of law in the province. It has abjectly failed to do so, and this is creating a human rights crisis across Balochistan.
Testimony on, thank all of you for participating today. There will be votes coming up, coming up soon, so we want to try to get involved with some questions right away. I'll just do a few, and member will know how to do it, and we'll make sure that our other congressmen get a chance as well. I think one point of the story, I like to read history. I mean, history, I like to read history. That's, and Mr. Peters was expressing, as talking about Thomas Jefferson and such. I agree with you, Dr. Peters, that I think, or Mr. Peters, I should say, or Colonel Peters. I think that our founding fathers and most of the people who built this country would be turning over in their grave if they found out that we were sending American military personnel in order to maintain the colonial boundaries that were established by the people we had to fight in order to become independent. And many of the conflicts that we have throughout the world today, I agree with you, Colonel Peters, that can be traced right back to the colonial era with decisions that were made by colonial powers, and then we end up in conflicts like this, and especially if the United States intervenes in order to maintain a status quo of border lines, which is what we seem to be doing. This is not consistent with our national interests or our traditions at all. And I think America needs to re-examine this issue and have a heartfelt debate internally about what should motivate America to get involved. But one thing is for sure, when someone is helping kill Americans or threatening to set up some sort of dictatorship over for whatever cause, Americans, we should not be on their side in helping them. And I think that what broke the straw that broke the camel's back was when we found out that not only has Pakistan been arming those Taliban and other radicals that have been murdering American soldiers in Afghanistan, but they have given aid and comfort and safe haven to the man who masterminded the slaughter of 3,000 Americans. And anybody who doesn't believe that they did that is an irrational optimist about what's going on down there. I think that at that point we need to understand that we cannot back up everything that Pakistan does simply because something might disturb the lines that were drawn so long ago, and that would create instability. With that said, thank you. Would you like to comment on that? And
yeah, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
But you only got about 20 seconds to do it.
Mr. Chairman, you'd like to read history. Today you are making history. Not only does Pakistan facilitate terrorism in Afghanistan while playing triple and quadruple games, but we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that Pakistan has made us complicit in terrorism against India, because Pakistan, using the nuclear red herring, knows that they have been able to sponsor attacks against New Delhi, against Mumbai, and knowing we will step in and stop India from retaliating. Imagine how different it would be if the Pakistanis didn't think they could count on us to run interference.
Okay. I think that's a good point. Let me just end my questions and answers with this thought, and it's been expressed by our witnesses. If we're going to be taken seriously when we talk like this, we have to be consistent and we have to be honest. And I certainly, whether it's the Singh province or Balochistan or what's going on in the Baluch province in Iran or what's going on in the Baluch province in Pakistan, those people have a right to the self-determination, which is what is being testified today. Let's note, I think the people of Kashmir also have a right to their self-determination. And I think Dr. Fair might want to comment on that.
I mean, I'm going to focus my comments upon our relationship with Pakistan.
30 seconds, then we have
30 seconds. But I do want to say one thing, the Leahy Amendment. For the last several years, I've been looking at our relationship with Pakistan, and we have been very negligent in taking the Leahy Amendment seriously. Whether we're looking at Pakistan abuses in FATA or SWAT, talking to U.S. officials, we don't even populate the Leahy database, or we've begun doing so quite late in the game. But the problem goes back to what Ali Dian was saying, is that in many ways, Pakistan's abuse of human rights served our interests. And so we're kind of coming to this late in the game that we're trying to ask the Pakistanis to clean up their act after we've given them a blank check for about a decade, literally a blank check for about a decade.
That's correct. I think we've been manipulated for longer than that. We have about 8 minutes before we have to be on the floor for a vote. Would you like to ask a couple of questions?
I have a question.
And we'll give each one of our
Thank you, Mr.
guests
Chairman.
a
I'll do this
couple
very quickly to try to get some other people in as well. I wanted to go to Dr. Bohr. In 2008, in written testimony before Congress, he wrote about the political, cultural, and economic oppression of the Baluch people at the hands of the Iranian regime. I'm interested in hearing what, if anything, has changed in the past 4 years. And secondly, with regard to the Balochistan areas in Iran, how do you see their sentiment in terms of being open to working with the West?
I think Baluch in general, whether in Iran or in Pakistan, they are very open. They have welcome U.S. support with open arm, and they have also expressed their desire that if Balochistan become independent, to provide the U.S. with bases in Gwadar And of course, as you know, Balochistan strategically probably is the most important piece of the land in the world, stretching from the Strait of Hormuz to Karachi. And that is where the 40% of the world oil passes. And unfortunately, the Chinese are building a naval base, or they are building water. And even more dangerous for the U.S. strategic interest is connecting the overland Karakum Highway to Gwadar, so that instead of going through U.S. Navy in Pacific and in Indian Ocean through the Indian Navy, so they can come directly there, and that is the choke, the Strait of Hormuz. So, so the Baluch have historically, in fact, they have been searching, and of course, right now there is a perfect coincidence of interest between Baluch and the U.S., because Baluch, they don't want the oil pipeline to go from Iran to Pakistan, in violation of U.S. sanction. The Baluch, of course, they are secular. They are against the Pakistan Taliban alliance because they are secular, and they want to fight Taliban. If the U.S. support the Baluch, they can stop Taliban sheltered by ISI and Pakistani government in Balochistan. Yes, sir.
We have time, and I apologize. You never know when votes are going to be called. We've talked about 3 more minutes worth of questions and answers, and I'm going to grant Louis Gohmert a minute. Dick Keenan first. Judge has something he has to say. Yeah. Judge Poe is a minute, and then Louis Gohmert.
Thank you for being here. I want to say this. I'm a great believer in self-determination for peoples who believe in it as well. Balochistan, I think, fits that category. Somebody over there in Balochistan has been reading the Declaration of Independence that gives a justification on a moral and legal reason why people can separate themselves from abusive governments. So we will see how that plays out. As far as Pakistan goes, they are the Benedict Arnold in the relationship with the United States. 10 years and $20 billion later, we're still paying them to not look out after our interest. They persecuted the informant that had gave us the information about Osama bin Laden, charged him with treason. I mean, how long is it going to take before we get the point? We don't need to continue to give American money to Pakistan at all. Not a dime. And they've proven they don't deserve it, and it's not in our national interest. And the third comment is, the United States, as one of y'all has said, needs to look to India as a supporter and as an ally on the not just the economic front, but the war on terror as well. And lastly, Mr. Peters, you will never make it as a diplomat in the State Department.
Congressman, I am proud to be a soldier.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
You see, it's always great to have Texans around. You know, they they just step right up. And here's another one, Louis Gohmert. Gohmert.
Well, and thank you, and I couldn't agree with my fellow former judge from Texas more, but it is greatly disturbing to hear that weapons that we have provided to Pakistan have been utilized to create human rights violations. That is particularly disturbing. That's not what this nation is about. And it would seem to me that since we are trying to get out of Afghanistan and turn that country over to them, the quicker we could stop assisting Pakistan in funding the Taliban that we are trying to fight, which is also creating human rights violations against Balochistan, it sounds like we could create a real win for the United States, Balochistan, Baluchs, for people of Afghanistan, if we just quit helping Pakistan help all of our enemies. So I appreciate your testimony. If I look forward to anything additionally they may have to submit.
We've got 3 minutes before we have to be on the floor to vote, so I will give a 30-second summary. First of all, thank you. There was a lot of trepidation by people before we held this hearing. I got so many emails that threatening all sorts of crazy things and worrying that some people would be represented. We learned a lot by this hearing. We put a lot of stuff on the record this is not to plot out some sort of conspiracy. What we're here to discuss is start a national dialogue in the open about what America's policy should be in this very volatile part of the world, and where our ideals for human dignity and freedom and justice and self-determination, where they fit in to our policies in that part of the world. So we've started the discussion today. I think this hearing was a first good step, and it was certainly not a stunt on anybody's part. We honestly really was going to try to get into these issues. So I want to thank you all for coming, and I'm sorry we do have to run off for our votes right now. This hearing is adjourned.
I hope to see you again on Washington.